Well, everyone, welcome to another Art of the Game where three experienced GMs, DMs, keepers, MCs, whatever the heck you want to call us,
God.
from different games,
Yeah.
give tips. And this is originally the brainchild, brain baby, brain adopted thing of Woody. So why don't you tell us what the topic is for today?
Yeah, well, we're talking about how to create investment in the story or in the game. Um, this one was very much on my mind, has been for years because I have the experience of being a young person, 18 years old, inheriting my first actual player group outside of my family, and having all the players were 16. And it became a bit of a chaotic mess very quickly, and you had to engage the skill set of how to get them invested in the story and try to like learn how to get them to actually follow a plot and all these rather than just going off and like whatever kids are going to do. And it's a skill, and I think that we have a situation, as Greg will probably attest, that in the modern era of gaming, this when a lot of adults are getting into it rather than as kids, maybe this isn't as much of an issue for some groups. But it is still an important skill nonetheless. And so, gentlemen, what do you have to say?
When you say player investment, you're not talking about convincing people to join the game. You're talking about getting them like involved and intensely into the story and plot and stuff.
Correct, and I think that also is also very important from the standpoint of like you're going to have people that are joining the group that have never played before, and you have to get them to a point where they want to keep doing it, and that does require that they get excited about coming every week, and they would have to be invested in the story, invested in the game, invested in the characters, or whatever it is, and so those elements have to be there, or these new people are going to go back to whatever they were doing and are not going to stick with this new hobby. And
Meaning
we
straight crime, probably.
yeah, exactly, or like you know killing
Adults
people
these
and
days.
killing
Yeah.
people and hiding them in their ice in their ice chest. So
Gosh,
um
dark.
yeah. Yeah.
I
But no, it's actually really an important topic.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the main thing, the first, I think there's multiple things, and the very first one has to be that you make sure that, especially if they're a new player, that they have a character that they really like,
Mhm.
because it's very easy for them to just be like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, okay, I'll do that, as you suggest things, right?
Yeah.
And if they don't have a character they don't like, they're not going to be involved for sure.
No.
But
But
I would say it's probably the first step.
Marks, do you have anything to add to this? Because I know you have the same experience as a teenager that I did.
Yeah, it can be
Yeah.
tough as a teenager. So I think it's a couple of different strategies compared to being a teenager too, because maybe they don't always get in the story as much. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do. But I think whenever like leveling and character, well, for one, to make sure they like their character
Mhm.
and don't poo poo their character, and let them. I think when you're younger, especially, they're gonna want to um, they're gonna be more obsessed about powering up their character and stuff too.
Yeah.
So
So
you want to lean
yeah,
into that.
it's the chase. Like
Mm.
wanting that next level and that next character customization, the next piece of equipment.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
you get
Well,
addicted to that.
yeah.
It
Well,
also
for me,
depends on the character. But yeah.
yeah. Well, for me, like the idea of investment, like kind of it deals with like if you're trying to tell a story or develop a story with it, you also have to like tie the characters to that story in some way. Like
Mhm.
there has to be a reason for them to be there, as opposed to simply being, well, we're just playing this module and this is the game the GM wants to do. And I'm not necessarily saying that you have to like everybody's backstory ties in and it's like lost in like how crazy entwined everyone is. It's like it's not necessarily going to be like that, but there does have to be things happening that ultimately like there has to tie them to the adventure. There has to be something that gets the character invested in somehow, in some way. And so, like if you're going after a big villain and you've got a character who's just a champion wants to kill villains, I mean that's fine. But it does help if there are things narratively that occur that would matter to this character that make it make sense that that character is going on this quest where they've walked away from everything they know, they've abandoned their entire life to go travel the world, and like I mean throw the ring in the mountain, or destroy the evil sword, or defeat the emperor, or whatever it is, right? Like there has to be, like, because like in Star Wars, uh, like with the situation with the death of Owen and Beru, like, and how that all circumstance went together. Not like Luke Skywalker had incredible motivation to leave home at that point, and from that point forward, he was committed, and it made absolute sense that he would be. Anyone would be in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of,
Mm-hmm.
especially story games now, or the ones that lean story, like PBTA and whatever else. I can't think of
Powered
something
by the
head now.
Apocalypse, for
Yeah,
anyone that
Powered by Apocalypse.
that
Yeah,
isn't keeping
Mm-hmm.
score. Yeah.
They've really taken to another level of trying to do that, talking about either various ways, whether it's bonds, trying to pre-create bonds with the characters' connections, or lots of different tools depending on the game. But story threads that they link to, trying to make sure they have connections in the world.
I was just trying to think, like, what are some of these? Because obviously, Family Ties is one. Another is some type of.
You did one of them with Daggerheart, where when we played on Genre Play, you took the suggestion of letting us you made a map, and then you let us kind of come up with names of certain locations and kind of think about certain ideas what those locations
would be. That's less about the characters tied, but more about the players being tied to what's created, which is interesting. Yeah. For Woody, I don't know if you noticed, but Daggerheart, they have an optional rule where you have just a blanket empty map, and then players take turns like putting in things on that map that they just come up with.
I haven't been able to see that episode because with the new job, my entire dynamic is different. So I used to have all this time throughout the day to listen to stuff, and so okay, let's listen to Greg's new video. But like, like it's not like that in the new job yet. So
no, I don't. I don't know if those have been put out yet, actually. So I don't.
Well, you have had one. Oh yeah, one Daggerheart out.
That specific Daggerheart coming out.
That was a pre-gen module that they gave. The one where we created our own map and stuff was, I think they're still coming out soon.
Yeah, that's the other group. Yeah.
Well, one of the examples I like to use with this is that like RPGs at like combat encounters are one of the critical components, and there are players out there that just want to get in there and mix it up, and and a lot of there's also GMs that are like go from it's like they're playing Final Fantasy Tactics, where it's going from combat encounter to combat encounter, but like you still need to have some narrative to tie it together, something to justify where they are. Even a dungeon crawler campaign still needs some narrative to like. There needs to be something going on there, like some reason why they're in the dungeon, or some objective, and sooner or later, they have to emerge from the dungeon with the treasure they went looking for. And if it's something important, then there is going to be a bigger game out there in the overworld, and it is important to tie the characters to these things, like and you can tie into people's backstories, you can create dramatic events. I mean, like I think personally, I think it's important to make it personal, and I'm not saying personal in like personal attacks and make it like attack their backstory and murder their family and make them want seek revenge, but like there is like and there's those are valid, but you can't always go to that same solution. Like you can't do that in the next campaign, but there do have to be elements that connect these characters to it, right?
Yeah,
or just having NPCs that show up often that are actually connected to certain player characters.
Yeah, can I say something?
Like they have a relationship with the shopkeeper. Like like if the shopkeeper needs help and he appeals to the party, and it's actually a really important tactic. Like if you can create situations where a particular NPC is indebted to the party for helping them, that's an important connection, because now they're going to go back to the NPC. If it's a shopkeeper and they've earned a discount, they're going to keep going back. And every time you can build these connections with like build a supporting cast, the more of those characters that you've created that the players actually kind of want to interact with, that is like perfect gold, because then they're going to grab if their favorite NPC is now attacked or like under threat by local organized crime, you've now put them at odds with the local crime lord. That's perfect. Yeah.
Some things I do, thinking like a monster of the week in real life stuff or offline. Like I would, introduce a lot of NPCs, and I would see who they resonate, that they
Mm-hmm.
interested in. Either annoy them in a funny way or they like a lot.
Yeah.
And so, like for example, one group of Monster of the Week, one character was kind of flirting with the character, so I was like, oh, okay, we'll start this little thing with this other character, and then this other character was super annoying, so I'm like, oh, let's make him keep showing up constantly. And then at one throwaway line, someone's like, oh, I think we should go on vacation now. And I'm like, oh yeah, so this annoying character is like super rich, and he says he'll throw you guys on a vacation and stuff, but he's going to be there.
Yeah.
And then you decide to ask out that girl that was NPC, and so I continue these little threads with the characters playing off of what they were liking. But I tend to do that with some other younger people that I game with, or some kids, nephew, nieces, and stuff. Yeah. I will also kind of play off of what NPCs they find interesting, and they still kind of mention those NPCs, like looking for them, hoping they'll pop up again sometimes. Yeah. And I also, this is kind of very niche, but you could do this. I play music a lot of times, and then I'm not online, so I can play whatever I want. And then Monster of the Week's contemporary, so I'll be like, oh, what music should they be playing? And they'll pop out songs and go, okay, boom, and I pop that music on, and they just get excited about that.
So one of the tactics I had done on this subject of creating investment in the story, we had this player who in real life was one of those guys that could kind of get any girl. At least he thought he could. He's obviously only getting the girls that are easy. But if you knew this guy, you'd understand. But he was,
which also means he's easy.
Right, he was, and he's also like extremely charismatic. He's one of those players that could get everybody to follow him and go do stuff, because you kind of need those people sometimes in a group that are natural leaders, even if they're bad at it. And but what he decides to do is he wants to go hit on the barmaid, and I was looking for something, and he basically fed right in. So he wants to go hit on the barmaid, bed her down, have an evening, right? So he borrows somebody's flute from another character, plays really bad music, tries to entertain this girl, and I'm like, all too easy. And so, so of course she is all over this, right? So he so he thinks he's going to go get some action, and then he shows up to the room wearing a pair of boots and a cloak and carrying the flute. And that's it. His character's naked in every other respect. So he's full of confidence. He walks in the room and finds her murdered on the bed where they were going to meet.
Wow.
Yes. So, and then somebody sees him. So now we have a murder. We have a murder suspect who's a party member, and it's really ugly.
And a naked guy holding his flute.
And a naked guy holding the flute, right? So he immediately jumps out the window and then runs to get help from the party, and totally forgets he's naked. Which hilarity ensued. But it immediately now we have a plot, because like the party basically has two choices: they bail or they stay and deal with it. And they had decided to try to actually find the murderer, and then they did, and it was turned out how it and it played into something else that was happening that I needed to kind of like build on. But it immediately created a sequence of events which connects the characters to the game, because you would have this inherent aspect where the players are inherently looking for excuses to be cohesive as a team, whether it makes sense or not. One of the players is in extreme danger. He cannot just get away from this problem, and so he either has to confront it or run from it, and then everybody has to help him, and that immediately pulls everybody into this problem. And it worked extremely well. And this is a prime example of the kind of thing I'm talking about. This creates investment in the story. And from that, if you spin it off correctly, if you have one really good event, you can build other events off of that. And I ended up getting, I think, 3 or 4 months of story just off that particular event. And everybody was hooked.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you call that? I guess that's like, it's more than just building connections. It's letting them drive what's happening, right? Ultimately.
Yes, it is. It's also me being an absolute son of a bitch. But but yeah, no. Well, we'll see that's actually part of the other side of this. I think is that like what the players do will have more impact than what you have done as a game master. And so if you can take their decisions and use what they want to get them involved enough to do something, and then you use those decisions to build off of for the next event, and develop what's coming next off of that, right? And then build, like, have enough improv that you can build your plot around what they're already doing, and it certainly takes on the color that they created the problem, and anything that they directly have a hand in creating, they're going to feel more inclined to continue with.
And that's what we talked about earlier. Sometimes if you just start simple,
Yeah.
like the goblins attack the bar. Okay, then let's see where they came from. The bartender's
Yeah.
going to give them all that. They'll end up doing some shenanigans at some point, and you can just start building from there.
Yeah,
a lot
absolutely.
of the times.
Well, in my home game, where they were doing the multiverse one we talked about, where the players have shifted into a contemporary Earth, and so I'm like, well, what are you guys going to do? I want to get them to, like, kind of like, what are you guys doing now that you're here? Kind of get something started. And one of the players decided he was playing the assassin. I'm going to go find the organized crime locally and hire myself out as a hitman. Like, that's straight up what he decided to do. And I'm like, well, okay, well, looking at what we believe organized crime is in my area, because there's been rumors of Russian mafia for years operating in my area, but they run body shops. It's the weirdest. Okay, so anyway, I had him instead. Instead of killing people, he got a job to go boost some cars, which most of the players, except for Chaz, interestingly enough, were absolutely on board with. He's playing a samurai, so they all go boost a bunch of cars, and it doesn't exactly go smoothly. They end up some of their plans kind of go awry, but it's interesting that I could then take that and have me, well, you stole a car from the wrong person, and now he wants payback, right? Because, like, in one of the incidents, it went wrong. The guy has the person who owns the car on the ground. He's basically robbing him. His wife comes out the door. She runs back in to call 911. He takes the car, goes. So he got caught, but he got the car. So who were those people connected to, right? Like, did they have an uncle or somebody that you don't mess with? And now somebody's looking for some payback on that car theft. Like, you could build off these things quite successfully, and once the players have actually done the action, they kind of can't undo it, and they can't blame you for it either, because they're the one that chose to steal the car.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Also, I was just thinking another one is it's always good to reduce, like, what I would call boring stuff. Like, if your combat's going super long and they're just waiting for their turn for most of the game, or if a lot of players, sometimes you have a player just wants to go off on their own and do this thing, and then 2 hours later, everyone joins back up, right?
Yeah.
Like, avoid those things for sure.
Yeah.
Because those would derail.
That one's kind of hard to avoid. Like splitting the party is a difficult thing to get around, because it's going to happen.
I actually suggest, if you split the party, to bounce back between the two. Like, don't stay all on one forever.
Oh no, I totally do that. I do that as much as possible, but then you have the challenge of having, like, engaging encounters for this group and this group, and they both have to do something. Yeah.
Right. Nothing's worse than a combat without everyone, because oftentimes people are just waiting there on their phone.
Yeah.
But
well, it's a challenge for sure. Marks, do you have anything else to add to this?
Yeah, if you're thinking about bouncing between storylines, just think about how a movie does it. So, and if they didn't have a threat originally for Group A or whatever, then just make up something and throw it in and come up with something new.
Yeah.
Do split screen.
Yeah, you split screen it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, and it can work really well if you do combat that way. It could be really exciting because you bounce back and forth like that.
Greg's chart.
So what we talked about is ensuring they like their character. That was the very first thing we mentioned. Then what the hell is that? Tie the character to the story and put, like, some personal motivation. I just wrote down the ones we kind of brought up.
Dark.
Woody is dark sometimes. I mean, it's true. I was thinking,
I'm keeping it real.
If you give them property, that's also another way to go about it.
Yeah.
If you give them a tavern to maintain, and someone takes a crap on the side of their wall, that alone will make them go crazy. But we talked about building connections to the world. I think that's what you're talking about, Woody. With these are all your examples, basically, where you gave, like, a whole bunch of.
Well, they're just ways to approach it. Like, though I want to come to your first thing there. You said don't poo-poo the character. I cannot stress enough how important that is, because if you want people to be invested, don't do it. Like, if you want people to be invested, you have to recognize that, like, this person has picked a character, whether it's a fighter or a rogue or something, archaeologist, whatever it is. Like, that's what they want to do. you have to incorporate that into the story, because
Yeah.
if this guy wants to just be Indiana Jones, and you don't give him chances to be Indiana Jones, you could very well be setting yourself up for failure there.
Yeah, I've been in groups as a player where I've seen people, where other players sometimes get in the way of another player's stuff, like on purpose, I guess for whatever reason. And I've also seen where GMs push back really hard against a certain character direction because whatever it didn't fit their story or something, and nobody likes that. So you as a GM need to adapt to whatever the cast of characters are to make it fit so that each of them has a role.
Yeah. And sometimes that means homebrewing stuff to make it, if they're like way underpowered because they wanted to do something that just doesn't work well, let's say in D&D, just homebrew some stuff and fix it.
And if the players aren't feeling it with your story, you have to adapt too. Like if they just simply do not want to do what you wanted to do, you got to go do something else. And you cannot force them to do it.
Yeah.
They have to have control over their own destiny.
Yeah. Yeah, so the other thing we talked about was building around the player actions, which you were just talking about. Like, you always want to get them to do stuff and then build off what they did. Mm-hmm. If you have a choice between introducing some new thing or having something from their past that they made previously come back and bite them, sometimes it's better to have things from their past come back and bite them because I'll get them more involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah, one of the things I don't like about Curse of Strahd, I think it's got a lot of cool stuff in it. But one of the things that the challenge at first is that these characters they're out from outside and they get stuck in Barovia.
Yes.
And have no ties to anybody or anything except maybe one out. And so that makes it a little tricky. So you really got to get them into the middle of the politics and struggles between different factions and get them to like certain NPCs so they care about it beyond just trying to get out.
Yeah, or find some aspect of the world that they get interested in and want to interact with, and then start screwing with that. You know? Yeah.
Join factions and stuff. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, every world building thing should have factions, right? There's always people who think something different than another group of people or have different goals.
Totally. Yeah.
And then the last thing I point out is just reduce boring times. Don't. Sometimes the players will split the group. It'll happen, but try to always involve the other players in what they're doing while the others are doing something else. Don't spend half a session just talking to two people when you have four people.
No, and maybe avoid making one character the centerpiece of the campaign too. Like, it can be the starting point, but you got to get everybody else involved. Like, if your storyline revolves around a particular character being there, like, it has to be there for the campaign to work. All you need for the campaign to fall apart is for that player to decide they don't want to play that character anymore, or God forbid that character dies, and so that's not really sustainable.
Yeah, you can actually have one of the characters be like the centerpiece of the story in a way, but if you do that, you have to think of the other players as being like supporting that person that's agreed on, that they're kind of trying to get to that ultimate goal. Yeah. If you do that, the best thing you can do is have a backstory for those supporting characters that's going to try to turn them against that person. They're going to have to, through the power of friendship or whatever, deal with their past and things like that.
And there had to be a reason for those other characters to keep pursuing the storyline, even if the main character that you've set up is not there.
Yeah, just create conflicts of interest if that happens, to where that the player is going to hopefully make the right choice. If not, maybe, whatever. But another episode. But you can make it work.
Well, hey, Marks, I think we got an episode here.
Ooh, we got an episode. Another one in the can. All right. Well, go in the comments. Let us know what your thoughts are, what your experiences are, what you think we got right, what we got wrong, whatever. Make it a conversation. And, of course, subscribe and keep track of our game and our other games like Behind the Dice and or actual plays on genre play and stuff. So that is it for today, and until next time,
ciao.
Cue the theme song.
When the dice roll high, we touch the sky, but when they crash, it's a belly laugh. Genre play lighting the way, our tales unlock.